Yo, how you guys doing? Digirex here, and today I'm coming at you with a Destiny video. And in today's video, there have been a lot of tier lists on the internet, but today I'm making a tier list of every exotic weapon in Destiny 2. So we have every exotic weapon down here besides Outbreak Perfected, because Outbreak Perfected was put into the game after this tier list was made, unfortunately. But we'll just be adding Outbreak Perfected at the end. Besides that, we have every single exotic weapon in Destiny 2 here, and we are going to be ranking them just because I've seen a lot of tier lists lately. We have S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and then F tier, which is just no. Poor option is D tier, has very niche spots, is kind of C tier, fun to use, works well in day-to-day stuff, but not end games, B tier. A tier could be S tier, but has one fault holding back, and S tier is extremely easy to use, high damage, common in endgame / competitive. So we are going to be starting off with the Black Talon here, the exotic sword, and honestly, would I put it in C? Has very niche spots where it works, but that's it. Fun to use, works well in day-to-day stuff, but not endgame. So we are going to be rating it. We're not going to be rating it on aesthetics or anything like that. This is just purely performance. So honestly, I'd put it here. It doesn't, I mean, it's not, it couldn't be S tier really, and it doesn't have more than one fault holding back. It's really good. It can be good in Crucible, and it can be good in day-to-day stuff like strikes, but it's not really good in endgame. So I think B tier is a good spot to put Black Talon. So Borealis, the elemental changing sniper rifle. I mean, it has very niche spots where it works well, but that's probably it. I'm gonna put it in C tier. Honestly, not that great. Definitely can't use it in endgame. Wouldn't even really use it in strikes. Just very niche spots where there's a lot of shields, maybe, almost like the Outbreak Perfected mission. Cerberus. Honestly, probably put it in B tier. Fun to use, works well in day-to-day stuff. You can use it in stuff like Gambit. You could even use it in strikes and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Sometimes you can use it in Crucible. It's definitely a really fun exotic. Very, very, very unique. I like it. Probably my favorite exotic auto rifle in the history of Destiny. Just a very unique weapon, fun to use. Yeah, works well in day-to-day stuff, but like it's not great for endgame. The Chaperone here, I'm going to put in A tier. Honestly, it could be S tier. The only reason I'm holding it back is because of the skill gap it actually takes to use this weapon. As we see S tier, one of the requirements is extremely easy to use. The Chaperone is not extremely easy to use. It is an amazing shotgun with awesome range, although it takes a lot of skill to accurately hit your shots with that, and because of that, I'm just gonna drop it down to A tier just because the fault holding it back is the skill gap that it actually takes to be effective with this weapon. So the Cold Heart, it used to be S tier. It used to be great for DPS, but now we have so many other things for DPS. I mean, you just never see this weapon anymore. It's just pretty much insignificant now when you have like stuff like machine guns, or you even have stuff like Whisper the Worm. I mean, it's just pretty damn insignificant. I'm just gonna put it in D. Not the worst, because it still can do damage, but there's so many things that can do better damage now. It's just probably D tier, to be honest with you. C tier, maybe C tier. Almost want to put it in C tier. I almost feel like Borealis is better than Coldheart, though. Coldheart's pretty insignificant. So the Colony, my personal favorite exotic in Destiny. I don't know if I'd put it S tier, really. This is my favorite exotic, personally, so I'm just a little bit biased, unfortunately. S tier, probably not. I mean, you could use it in Comp, Crucible, even in Gambit. I'm definitely going to put it on an A tier because it is pretty damn powerful in Gambit and even Comp. People never really expect the Colony, and it ends up absolutely destroying them. The Seekers are really good on this thing. You get 5 grenades normally, so that's one more than you would get with like a legendary grenade launcher. Overall, a pretty solid exotic. The Crimson. So I actually like the Crimson a lot also. Red Death used to be my personal favorite in Destiny 1, so Crimson holds a little space in my heart. Although I think I'm going to put it in C tier. Has very niche spots, especially when you have the Catalyst. It can be decent because it does reload automatically when you get kills, so it can be good for a Gambit or something like that. Sometimes strikes, but I don't think it's enough to be B tier. I think it'll stay at a lower C tier. Last word, honestly, this is probably S tier. It's been nerfed since Destiny 1. If it was Destiny 1, it'd be S tier, no questions asked. It is extremely easy to use, it has high damage, and it is common in comp, competitive Crucible. Really, really damn powerful in competitive Crucible. We have the Darcy, pretty good for DPS, although there are other things better for DPS. Works well for like Spire of Star raid, but once again, it is pretty niche. You wouldn't really even see it in day-to-day. There's a lot of more stuff you would probably see in day-to-day. It's either a D or a C tier, to be honest with you. We'll keep it in C tier. The Fighting Lion. This gun is probably sitting right now. Right now, this gun is actually pretty damn solid. Honestly, I'm tempted to put it at an A tier right next to the exotic colony there. What would really be holding it back? Not much holds this thing back. It is a special weapon grenade launcher. And just because of that, I think it has to go A tier. It can't be S tier. If it did a little more damage, maybe a bigger blast radius, it could be S tier, but that's the one thing holding it back. Although it is pretty common in comp. Pretty damn good. Graviton Lance. At one point, this would have been S tier easily. Now I think it's more B tier. It still works pretty well in every like day-to-day stuff like strikes. Maybe even endgame. If you're really pushing it, you probably could make an argument for A tier, but I'm gonna probably keep it on B tier, just because of the way it is right now. Because there's other stuff that is better currently for clearing ads and such. Although this weapon is pretty damn good in PvP, and it's decent in PvE too. It's just decent in both. Honestly, it deserves to be on B tier here. Pretty like mid-tier weapon. So Hard Light is poor option. Will probably get you called out. It's pretty much like a worse Borealis, or maybe it could move up to C tier just because of the changing. It's got no damage drop off, and it can change elements, kind of like the Borealis. So I'm almost tempted to put it in just next to the Borealis. We'll just put it on the same tier as the Borealis because I don't think it's as bad as Cold Heart, to be honest with you. Huckleberry. This is the first exotic I'm just gonna put in F tier. This exotic sucks. This is literally a worse Recluse, a worse Breakneck. This gun was added before Recluse and Breakneck. This gun really has no advantage over them, to be honest. It's just pretty bad. So we got Iganami, Bagazami, Jibibami, whatever you want to call this sniper. It's definitely A tier. Mostly because it can one-shot, body shot people. Now this isn't really useful in normal play, but this is extremely useful in Gambit, as you can one-shot invaders, and when you're an invader, you can one-shot people. Out of their supers. Besides that, not really good for DPS or anything PvE related, but it is great for Gambit right now, and it is pretty damn decent for Crucible if you really want to use it in there. So I'm gonna put it at a solid A tier. Jade Rabbit. Unfortunately, I do like the Jade Rabbit, but I'm gonna have to put it at D tier. Pretty poor option for both PvE and PvP. Never been a good option for PvE. PvP was pretty decent at one point, but it has since been nerfed. Very hard to compete with a lot of the weapons in the meta right now, pulse rifles and hand cannons. So it's gonna have to sit at D. It's not an absolute no. I don't think it's as bad as the Huckleberry, but it's gonna sit here. The Yotan is gonna have to be an automatic S tier for me. The Yotan is extremely good. Tons of damage. You get a decent amount of ammo for this. It's really good in PvE as it can do damage to bosses. It can take out higher level enemies. It's got a pretty decent blast radius, and it can one-shot enemies in Crucible and Gambit. This is probably even better than the last word in my opinion. Pretty damn awesome gun. The only thing holding it back is the really charge time, but that is definitely not enough to put it down to A tier. This weapon is amazing. It's so good. So many different applications. The Yotan. So, Le Monarch. I'll definitely put it on B tier. It's definitely fun to use. Works well in day-to-day stuff, but not endgame. That probably describes Le Monarch perfectly. Really good for strikes and stuff like that. Even sometimes stuff like Reckoning the Le Monarch could even be good. Personally, I like it just because when you fully charge it and shoot somebody with it, it creates an area of effect that also does burn damage around. Pretty damn awesome in my opinion. Really good. So, the Legend of Acarius, I'm going to put at A tier. The one thing really holding it back is like the reload speed, and honestly, it's really, really good, but you don't really get that much ammo for it. It doesn't really have too much application in PvE, unfortunately. Really good in PvP, but not many people are going to be using an exotic shotgun nowadays that you can have a pretty far range shotgun in your special slot. And like I said, this takes heavy ammo, so you're not really going to be able to use it that much, and it is a shotgun, so it is still going to be pretty difficult to use even when you get heavy ammo with it. Malfeasance, this can be used. This is pretty hard. I don't know if it's B tier or A tier. Honestly, kind of want to put it in A tier just because it's really, really good for the Reckoning, which is an endgame activity right now. We're going to leave it at A tier. It's really in between a B tier and an A tier. We're going to put it at A tier right now just because Reckoning is a thing. If Reckoning wasn't a thing, it'd definitely be B tiered, but just because it does extra damage to Taken. I made a video about this when I made a video about what's it called loadouts for the Reckoning. I recommended Malfeasance because it does extra damage to Taken. It's got a pretty damn good magazine size. Honestly, just a solid hand cannon all around. So I will put it in A tier just because of Reckoning. It's decent for Gambit also, which is probably its intended purpose or main purpose, but I'm going to put it at A tier just because of Reckoning. That activity just pushes it up here. So we got this raid exotic from freaking Black Armory. This is it's either an S tier or an A tier. It's really damn good. The raid exotics in Destiny 2 are really damn good. I don't know. It does a ton of damage. It does a ton of damage. You put these grenades around the target, it will destroy them. I'm trying to think what a disadvantage. I mean, it's not super great in Crucible. That'd be the one thing kind of holding it back. Do I want to put it on an A tier or a B tier? Or an S tier? It probably does deserve an S tier spot. I'm going to put it at S tier just because it can do a ton of damage. There's a lot of applications for it. You do get a lot of ammo for it. A lot more ammo than you really need to do a lot of damage. So, just because the excess amount of ammo, I think I'm going to put it on an S tier. Lord of Wolves. This gun is quite interesting. It's definitely more B tier. You can definitely hold your own with it in Crucible, and it can definitely do a ton of damage in PvE activities. I think it's a solid B tier. That's fair in my opinion. The Arbalast. This might be an S tier. I really like the Arbalast just because it is extremely good in Crucible, extremely fast charge time. Of course, it is a one-shot headshot primary linear fusion rifle, very, very unique. It can break shields of all types, automatically pretty much making it better than both Hardlight and Borealis all the way down here on C tier. Honestly, S tier, pretty damn solid, in my opinion. I like the Arbalast a lot. I think it's definitely better than a lot of these A tier weapons. Merciless. It was once S tier. I think we are going to put it at it's still a solid A tier. I was going to say B, but no, it's A. You can still use it in like end game kind of activities. There might be better stuff. There might be stuff that you need longer range for, but it's got to go with A still. It's still a very, very good gun, and it always has been since the start of Destiny 2. Might have multi-tool. Pretty poor option right now. I'm going to put put it at C tier. I did a video on the Mida multi-tool recently testing out year 1 loadouts and see if they still add up, or they still add up, whatever you want to call it. They still can participate in Crucible and things like that. Honestly, the Mida wasn't that bad, but it wasn't the best either. It's going to be C tier. Works well at long ranges in Crucible. Doesn't really work. Never really worked too well in PvE, unfortunately. So it's going to stay at a C tier. Polaris Lance. This exotic I really like the design for, although it's not quite a Huckleberry bad, but it is D tier, honestly. It's pretty damn bad. It was good at the time of Warmind, probably, but it's just not. It gets overshadowed by so many things now. It doesn't really have a spot anymore, unfortunately. It's still fun to use for strikes sometimes, so maybe you can make an argument to put it at C tier, but I just don't think it's as good as some of these other weapons we have at C tier, unfortunately. And scout rifles just aren't in the best place right now. You could make an argument, but no, I think I'm going to keep it at D tier. It falls more along the lines of like Jade Rabbit. See, all our exotic scout rifles are not doing so well right now. We got Mida, Jade Rabbit, and Polaris Lance down here, unfortunately. The Fire Cold Heart. We are going to put it on the same thing as Cold Heart, D tier. Prometheus Lens was once S tier for like a weekend until they nerfed it in the ground because it was absolutely broken, and yeah, they couldn't keep it broken. Prometheus Lens right here doesn't really have any use. Once again, still not as bad as Huckleberry. You've used it in PvE before, not awful, but it doesn't even have really any niche spots. It's just kind of a poor option, to be honest. Grenade Launcher Boy. This thing is pretty good. I forget the name of it for some reason, but I know it's pretty good. The thing is, you can kind of use it in-game. It kind of deserves an A tier, but I don't think it's as good as some of the A tier weapons, so I'm going to put it in B tier. Can absolutely melt targets if you just go sicko mode on the trigger. You can absolutely destroy targets very quickly if you just fire off all the grenades extremely quickly. Queenbreaker's Bow. It's kind of just like a scuffed Arbalest at this point. Still really good, although just not as good as Arbalest. Basically, in my opinion, it's a worse version of Arbalest now. The one thing that it has over Arbalest is that its aim assistance, its target acquisition is absolutely through the fucking roof. You can hit headshots with this thing that don't even look like fucking headshots. But overall, I think Arbalest has it over Queenbreaker's Bow. Rat King. Oof, this is going to be an F tier. Rat King has always been extremely bad, even after they buffed it. It's just a bad sidearm. The stats are pretty damn awful. And having more people doesn't really help it an extreme amount. And even if you have all the people, it just doesn't work. I mean, it's bad for DPS, it's bad for ad clear, it's bad for Crucible, it's just bad for everything. It's just going to have to sit at F tier. It is one of the worst exotics in Destiny history. Moving on to our boy Risk Runner, one of my favorite exotics. I really like Risk Runner. Honestly, I could make an argument for A tier, but I'm going to put it down at B tier. Just because it's not too good in Crucible. It can be good, but it is more niche situations. But it's not quite C. It's not that niche because you can get it to proc pretty often. You can even proc it yourself sometimes at the expense of taking damage. But I'm going to put it at B tier. It works pretty well. Skyburner's Oath is probably D or C. It's pretty damn bad in my opinion. Probably gonna put it at C tier, to be honest with you. It has a few niche spots where it works, maybe in like Cabal strikes, and I don't think it's as bad as like the Polaris Lance or the Jade Rabbit or the Prometheus Lens. I think it's a little bit better. It can do a good amount of damage just because it's so high impact. It's a pretty unique weapon, has cool tracking, stuff like that. Sleeper Simulant. Sleeper Simulant. S tier or A tier, folks? I'm going to put it at S tier just because it can one-shot and gambit still. I know it got nerfed, but it also still provides a lot of damage. You get a lot of ammo with it. It's pretty similar to Yotan in my opinion. Obviously, Yotan is a special weapon, but a sleeper I think still earns its spot on S tier just because of the amount of damage you can put out. And then in gambit, it is extremely good. It can even be good in Crucible. It's just a fun, good weapon. It's just very effective. Sturm, they buffed it. With Drang attached to it. I'm gonna say C. It's got very specific spots where it works, although it doesn't really work that many places, to be honest with you. But it's maybe strikes and stuff like that. Maybe just doesn't have that many areas where it really fits. Sunshot is probably a D. At first, when Destiny 2 first came out, I'd probably put it on S or A tier, but now it's more like a D. I mean, it just can't compete with a lot of stuff. It's basically just a glorified Firefly kind of thing. Keep scrolling up and down by accident. Basically a glorified Firefly. Really not much to say about it. Just pretty bad. Glorified Firefly. Zeros Regime. With the Catalyst, pretty damn good in Crucible. Honestly, I think we can put it to a solid B or C. It definitely doesn't have the potential to be A or S tier. B or C. I don't really know. I think it fits in more with the B tier weapons because it is pretty good with Crucible, especially if you have the Catalyst. Can be used in PvE, but you don't really see it that often, but you can still use it in certain day-to-day stuff. I don't think it's quite as bad as a C tier. Ace of Spades, this is going to straight to an S tier. The range on this thing is absolutely insane. This thing is super good on PC. It's still good on console too, but apparently it's not as good on console. I don't know why. The range is insane. The damage output is insane. You can be extremely accurate with it at long ranges. Reload speed, pretty damn quick. Memento Mori, its exotic perk, is amazing. 1,000 Voices, another one going straight to S tier. This fusion rifle is great for Gambit. You can shoot people across the map and watch them explode seconds after you put a beam into them. Super good for boss DPS and even ad clear if you just spray a bunch across it. Spray a bunch of ads with your little laser beam. Pretty damn awesome in my opinion. Just a really good all-around exotic for many different situations. Also good for Crucible. It's extremely infuriating if you get shot by it because you know you're about to die. You have about 2 seconds where you're like, I'm about to fucking explode. And then you end up fucking exploding and you're like, wow, that sucks. Sweet Business, definitely C. Very niche spots where it works. Definitely not as bad as a D tier, but it can't really fit in with the B tier kind of things. It's a very fun exotic, has a few spots where it works, but that's about it. So C tier. Telesto, A tier, was S tier before they nerfed it. Still a pretty damn good weapon for Crucible. That's where you see it most often. Pretty infuriating also. Overall, you can lay traps and stuff like that. It can do some decent damage in PvE too, much more than you'd expect. But honestly, we're going to keep it at A tier for now. Thorn, I'm going to put it at S tier. I know a lot of you guys are probably saying it is an A tier since in S tier we also have Ace of Spades and Last Word. But I'm honestly going to put it in S tier just because this thing rips it up in PvE, unlike any of these other exotic hand cannons do. This thing is insane for PvE. Really, you guys are sleeping on it. This thing you hardly even have to reload. You just go in. You just collect all these little souls and you just, I mean, it's crazy what you can do. The Thorn is actually really good for for PvE guys, and it is decent for Crucible, and that's why I think it earns its S tier slot. I don't think it's as bad. I think it's better than a lot of these A tier weapons. So honestly, I mean, it's really in between. Personally, I'm gonna put it at S tier. I could definitely see you putting it at A tier also. B tier, it's definitely better than B tier in my opinion. I would definitely put it at S tier, A tier. You can make an argument and convince me that it's A tier. Change my mind. It won't be that hard to change because I almost think it's A tier too. But I'm gonna put it at S tier just because I think a lot of people are sleeping on it. Really good for PvE. Thunderlord. Ooh, I'm gonna put it at S tier. This thing is really good, mostly just because of the weapon type it is. It's the only exotic heavy machine gun. Of course, we have 21% delirium, we have the hammerhead, but this is the only exotic machine gun, and machine guns are just super good right now. And of course, with the Thunderlord, you get decent boss damage as it speeds up over time. You can absolutely melt enemy players in Crucible and in Gambit, and of course you have that extra explosion after that just makes it excellent for ad clear, and for that I'm going to rate it an S tier exotic. Tractor Cannon, I want to put this at an S tier exotic also, just because it can cancel out supers, it can suppress enemies, it can make bosses more susceptible to damage also. Just an absolutely pretty damn solid exotic all around. You get a decent amount of ammo for it too. I really like the Tractor Cannon. Wishender, this is gonna probably be an F tier, honestly. This was one of my most anticipated exotics when Forsaken came around, but seeing through walls, I mean, that sounds really cool, but when you actually use the Wishender, it sucks. You barely get any, like, you can see, like, an inch. I don't know how to describe it. When you look through the scope, you don't get a lot of visibility. You can see, like, a very small field of view through walls. It's got a very long drawback. It takes a long time to draw back your arrows for the bow. Can't really compete with the other bows in Crucible. And bows just kind of suck in PvE, and that makes it an F tier. I would honestly just never use this weapon. Two-tailed Fox. Wait. I might have fucked up. Is this the Trinity Gal, or is this the Wishender? One of these is the Wishender, and one of these is the Trinity Gal. We're going to call this... Oh, this is the Trinity Gal, I think. This is Wishender. Wishender belongs in F tier. Trinity Gal's a little better. Still belongs in D tier. Pretty bad. A little better just because the charge time is less. I don't know which one is which. We're pretending this is Trinity Gal and this is Wishender because honestly, like... I don't know which one is which. They look so similar, and I'm not going to interrupt this video to look it up. Wishender still belongs in F tier. Trinity Gal is a little bit better. It goes in D tier just because of the charge time is a little bit better. It's a little bit better in PvE as you can electroshock enemies. Of course, not very good in PvP still, but it's still along the lines of these D tier exotics. Two-tailed Fox, where were we? We were back at the Two-tailed Fox. And, yeah, sorry about that, guys. I messed up the bows because the bows look pretty damn similar. Two-tailed Fox, probably B tier, fun to use, works well in day-to-day stuff, but not endgame. You don't really see it in endgame. It's not super useful for boss DPS or ad clear or anything like that, but it is fun to mess around with in Crucible, and it can do some serious damage in strikes, but not really raids or anything like that. Vigilance Wing, it's definitely kind of a C tier. It's got very specific niche. If Trials was still around, I'd probably rate it an A or B tier, but since there's no Trials, you really don't get to use its exotic perk that often, because its exotic perk was basically designed for Trials when you're the last man standing. It basically meant to be a clutch weapon, but now that there's no Trials, it only has a few certain spots where it works, like in 3v3 game modes, which isn't very often, so that's why it's going to have to go to C. Very niche. Still a pretty solid pulse rifle, though. 4-round burst, can melt enemies pretty quickly. That's why it's not a D tier, just because it's a solid weapon. But it's going to stay a C tier. Vigilance Wing. Wardcliff Coil, it's going to be an A tier for me. You could definitely make an argument for S tier, but comparing it to, like, Yotan or 1,000 Voices, it's definitely A tier. Some of these weapons we have on S tier are just extremely good. Like, I feel like 1,000 Voices is just kind of a better version of Wardcliff Coil. I guess you could make an argument that Wardcliff Coil can destroy ads a little more easily, or I don't know. Wardcliff just, it's really good, don't get me wrong, but it is just not as good as some of these S tier weapons we have up at the top. Alright, Whisper of the Worm. This is hard. I don't know if I would call it an S tier or an A tier. I think I'm going to call it an S tier just because if you're decent I mean, you get a lot of chances, but if you're decent, you can kind of just make your ammo last forever and absolutely destroy every boss in sight. Part of me wants to put it at a B tier just because there's a little bit of a skill gap, but it's definitely not as much of a skill gap as Chaperone, so I'm going to keep it at S tier. World Line 0. I'm going to put it at D tier. It's pretty damn bad, the World Line 0. Unfortunately, yeah, it's just bad. The teleport doesn't really do much. I like the Black Talon a lot more just because you have a little bit of range with it, which is 2 tiers up. Poor option. Honestly, it fits in pretty well with the other exotics we have down here at D tier. And we have Outbreak Perfected, which is not on this tier list because this tier list was made before Outbreak Perfected was added. But if I had to put Outbreak Perfected anywhere right now, I have not seen anything super crazy with it. It's been out for nearly a week now, or it has by the time this video went up. Outbreak Perfected has been out for a week now, and really not impressed with it, not gonna lie. So honestly, A tier or B tier, probably a B tier. It's good for certain stuff, but I don't know if you'll be seeing it too much in endgame unless you're trying to do boss damage challenge with the nanites or something like that. Maybe A tier. I'll just put it at A tier. You know what, the nanites are pretty decent. They can do a decent amount of damage. Good for ad clear, decent for crucible. So guys,
Then I'm open to mind, so we all need some time just to settle down. Won't you come around, cause I never can leave it alone. Talking about somebody rolling, boulevard dining, making it count for efforts I can't explain. Ballin' and feeling we drowning, never been humbled by playing the fighter.